The big news of the day, the Singapore government has unveiled its 2011 budget and it's giving out more than $13 billion in benefits to households and businesses. Now, the aim to help Singaporeans cope with immediate challenges like inflation, but also to grow incomes and strengthen the economy and society over the coming years. We'll have all the details for you. Let's kick it off with Imelda Saad joining us from the newsroom. Imelda.
Well, Gerard, this year's budget practically has something for everyone. And like some have said, just too many to list out on TV. Now, given that this is the last budget before the general elections due by February 2012, expectations were, of course, high overall. And I guess Singaporeans should be happy with the payouts. Now, part of this $13 billion in benefits to households and businesses is a $3.2 billion one-off grow and share package. Now, on the back of last year's exceptional economic growth, the government has also decided to put back into past reserves the $4 billion drawn out for the resilience package introduced to help the country cope with the global financial crisis. Now, Finance Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam has said that if the country succeeds in its economic agenda, Singapore will make the breakthrough into becoming a first-rate developed economy in 10 years. Now, let's look at what the man in the street stands to get.
There will definitely be more cash in the pockets of Singaporeans. All adult citizens can look forward to growth dividends of between $100 and $800 depending on income and the value of their homes. The payout will be given by 1st of May. Those who work will get more. There will be a one-off special bonus for those on the Workfare Income Supplement Scheme, which pays older low-wage workers who stay employed. The bonus amounts to 50% more for work done in 2010. It will be paid out fully in cash. So, for example, a 55-year-old employee earning $1,000 a month last year will receive a regular payout of $2,100 plus $1,050 for Workfare Special Bonus. Another $3.4 billion will go into top-ups for long-term social investments to help seniors, needy Singaporeans, and to support lifelong learning. Taxpayers will also enjoy a personal income tax rebate of 20%, capped at $2,000 for year of assessment 2011. There will also be a more progressive income tax cut. Marginal tax rates will be reduced for the first $120,000 of chargeable income. This means you pay less tax, especially if you're a middle-income earner. For example, those with chargeable income of $60,000 will now pay 25% less tax and save $650 a year. Other tax changes: the employer's CPF contribution rate will be raised by 0.5 percentage points, bringing it to 36%.
This is a bonus, but it is not merely an incidental part of our fiscal policy approach. It is how we share and redistribute the benefits of growth with Singaporeans while keeping to fiscal discipline. This package of surplus sharing will also help most of our lower and middle income households to offset their higher cost of living this year.
And something that got cheers from the House:
I will remove radio and TV license fees permanently. The license fees are losing their relevance.
This is effective from January 1st this year, and those who have paid the fees will get a refund. Now, this year's budget is the last to be delivered before the next general elections due by February 2012. And in many ways, the government has addressed the concerns on the ground. That is, the immediate need to help Singaporeans deal with inflation, and in the long term to raise the wages of low-income Singaporeans so that they can lead better lives.
And more on that abolition of radio and TV license fees. All fees already collected will be refunded by April. The fees were introduced in 1963 to fund public service broadcast content. The Finance Minister says TV ownership is no longer limited to middle and higher income groups. And Singaporeans now get broadcast content on the internet and mobile devices which don't attract license fees. MDA says it will continue to fund public service broadcasting needs. And MediaCorp says it remains committed to producing programs that promote national harmony within a commercial free-to-air environment. It currently exceeds the number of PSB hours per day mandated by MDA. And we'll have much more on individual and household benefits a little later on in the program. More now on help and lower income families, this time when it comes to the roof over their heads. A special housing grant will be introduced to help them buy a built-to-order or BTO flat for the first time. The grant is for families earning up to $2,250 a month, and more will be spent to rejuvenate housing estates over the next 10 years.
From this to this, it's a glimpse of the future at a housing estate near you. The government spending $10 billion over the next decade to remake neighborhoods. And home improvement will also come in the form of lift upgrading and other schemes to the tune of $55,000 per flat.
In 2011 alone, around 50,000 flat owners will benefit from these schemes. In the following 5 years, from 2012 through 2016, another 300,000 flat owners will benefit from these upgrading programs.
To keep homes within reach, the government will provide about $175 million in yearly grants for low-income families. This is on top of subsidized home loans to help families foot the bill.
We are making major investments to make Singapore a top-quality home for its citizens. We also want more Singaporeans, including those in the lower income groups, to have a home of their own which they can take pride in and which can appreciate in value over time.
Currently, the bottom 50% of households get help from an additional housing grant. Under it, households earning $1,500 and below monthly get $40,000 to help them own their first homes.
And as we mentioned earlier, businesses are getting $6.5 billion in benefits from this year's budget. The top attraction for them is a one-off corporate income tax rebate. Smaller companies which don't pay much tax can instead go for a cash grant of up to $5,000. But on the flip side, the government has raised employer CPF contributions and foreign worker levies.
Many companies in Singapore are facing significant cost pressures because of rising wage and rental costs. To lighten their load, the government has announced a slew of measures. These include a one-off 20% corporate income tax rebate capped at $10,000, or an SME cash grant amounting to 5% of revenue. The Singapore budget also outlined enhancements to the Productivity and Innovation Credit, or PIC scheme, introduced last year. Under this scheme, the government will invest some $520 million to promote corporate investments in activities that boost productivity and innovation, such as research and development and training of employees. Businesses will be allowed to deduct from their taxable income 400% for the first $400,000 of their expenditure in any of the 6 categories under the scheme. This is up from 250% tax deduction introduced last year.
We will help our companies make the most of opportunities in emerging markets and entrench our position as a global Asia hub. We will do more to groom globally competitive local enterprises. In addition, we will introduce incentives to strengthen our economic clusters by deepening capabilities and enhancing their competitiveness.
On the flip side, the CPF contribution rate for employers will be raised by half a percentage point, bringing the total contribution rate to 36%. The government will also introduce further foreign worker levy increases for all sectors. The average levy per foreign worker will be further raised by $60 for manufacturing, $180 for the services sector, and $200 for construction.
I believe the levy on foreign workers will have a growing and significant impact in certain sectors of the industry, like hospitality and retail and food and beverage. It's not simply the cost of the levy, it's whether or not you let these people in, and the two things together have to work.
And experts say that while the corporate tax rebate is good for local companies, for multinationals, it doesn't make that much of a difference. They add that MNCs that have their Asian headquarters based in Singapore would like to see further clarity on their tax liabilities.
More budget news after the break. We'll also hear from the man on the street. Well, Singaporeans we spoke to have welcomed the goodies in this year's budget, but some want more help to cope with the rising cost of living.
There was something for everyone this year, and Singaporeans say they saw this coming with measures like the personal income tax rebate of 20% capped at $2,000.
The government has a huge budget surplus, and I think it's about time that they should share some of the goodies with Singaporeans. Personally, personal income tax is always good.
It doesn't really surprise me because this year is going to be the election year, so it could be an election budget.
From growth dividends to MediSave top-ups, many said this year's budget covered most corners.
They can spend more, contribute to the economy.
Medical payments for the elderly, right? So these are the key areas that people are looking at.
Even the removal of the television and radio license fees proved good news for some.
Well, I think it's good for the entertainment industry. I think it's also good for the viewers and, those people.
Most Singaporeans I spoke to responded positively to the budget, saying it would benefit them one way or another. But of course, there were concerns over whether these goodies were enough to tackle the rising cost of living.
Well, things are getting more expensive. For old people like me, we don't get any increment in our salary. In fact, they're reducing our salary.
More details of the measures to help Singaporeans will be revealed during the Committee of Supply debate starting 28th February.
And here are reactions from MPs right after the budget was delivered in the House this afternoon.
During the parliamentary debate in January, I had asked for the government to consider a special bonus for workfare recipients in view of the outstanding growth performance last year. I am very, very pleased. In fact, I was very touched that the government did respond. And not only did we get a workfare special bonus for this year, we got a workfare special bonus for 3 years in a row.
I won't say we're overly excited, especially on the work levy. I think that's something that the employers will have to see how to defray or absorb the cost.
Fantastic election budget for the PAP.
Why do you say so?
I mean, it offers so many things. 8,500 for a household. I mean, poor people living in one-room flat, of course they will be attracted to it.
We pledge, right, to build a prosperous nation. This is a time where we've had a good past year. Now is the time to share it round, especially when you have the rising prices, when you can foresee difficulties ahead.
Well, the budget is unlikely to cause overheating in the economy. That's because the government is taking a cautious fiscal stance, forecasting a slight overall surplus for 2011. This comes after a smaller than expected deficit of $300 million last year versus an originally anticipated $3 billion shortfall. Singapore's economic growth is expected to be between 4% and 6% this year. That's a lot slower than last year's record expansion, but it remains above the country's trend growth of 3 to 5%. This means Singapore's output gap is positive, with the economy growing above capacity. So for this year, the budget is purposefully positioned to avoid stoking the flames of overheating and inflation.
I would say that this is a very cautious budget in the sense that, there are no bold and drastic measures that have been introduced by the minister. And the focus is very much on improving productivities over the next 10 years.
The government is aiming to distribute $8.7 billion in special transfers this year, up 21.6% from last year. Such transfers include growth dividends, GST credits and CPF top-ups. But because these measures are largely targeted, especially to lower income groups, there is unlikely to be an inflationary impact.
The measures put in place are one of two things. One is either looking at easing the price burden on the common man on the ground, especially the lower income group. On the other hand, is looking at boosting longer-term productivity, and these boosts of productivity, this will actually give rise to higher wage growth, which means that tackling inflation over the longer term is addressed.
Economists also say a contractionary fiscal stance was necessary to complement the central bank's efforts to combat inflation by tightening monetary policy. And for more reports and analysis on Budget 2011, do catch a special 1-hour edition of Singapore Tonight at 10 p.m. on our sister channel, Channel News Asia.